Picture this. The year is 272 CE. The most powerful empire in human history has just captured a queen who ruled an empire of her own. A woman who commanded 70,000 soldiers, who controlled trade routes worth billions in today's money, who minted coins with her face on them and declared herself equal to the Roman emperor. Her name was Zenobia. And right now, she's standing in chains outside the gates of Rome. You might think the Romans would just execute her. Quick, clean, done. After all, she'd conquered a third of the Eastern Roman Empire. She'd humiliated Roman legions in battle. She'd cost Rome an enormous amount of wealth and prestige. But that's not what happened. What Rome actually did to Zenobia and to other captured queens was so much worse than death. It was calculated, systematic, and designed to send a message that would echo through history for 2,000 years. Because Rome didn't just want to defeat its enemies. It wanted to destroy the very idea that anyone could challenge Roman power and survive with their dignity intact. Today, you're going to learn exactly what happened to queens who dared to defy Rome. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand why death would have been a mercy. To understand what Rome did to captured queens, you first need to understand why Rome was absolutely terrified of them. And I'm using that word deliberately. Terrified. See, Rome had a playbook for defeated kings. Kings ruled by hereditary right and military force. Once you defeated a king, you eliminated his legitimacy. You could install a puppet ruler or absorb the territory directly. Problem solved. But queens who ruled in their own right? That was a completely different problem. These women had commanded armies without anyone's permission. They'd inspired fanatical loyalty across tribal and cultural lines. They'd built power structures that functioned independently of Rome's entire political system. In Rome's worldview, this shouldn't have been possible. Roman women couldn't vote, couldn't hold public office, couldn't even control their own finances without male guardianship. But these queens proved Rome wrong. And worse, they proved that you could challenge Roman authority and succeed, at least temporarily. Take Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. By 270 CE, she'd conquered Egypt, Syria, and large parts of Asia Minor. She controlled critical trade routes between East and West. She proclaimed herself Augusta, Empress, in direct competition with the Emperor. Or Boudicca, who united warring British tribes in 61 CE and destroyed 3 Roman cities, including Londinium, modern-day London. Her forces killed an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 Romans and Romanized Britons in a matter of weeks. These weren't just military threats. They were ideological threats. Because if one woman could successfully challenge Rome, others might too. And that belief could spread like wildfire through the empire's conquered territories. Rome couldn't allow that. So when they finally captured these queens, they needed to do more than just win the military conflict. They needed to destroy the very idea that resisting Rome could ever be worth it. And that's where the cruelty began. The punishment actually started the moment a queen was captured. And it began with something most people don't expect: complete silence. After Zenobia's capture in 272 CE, there was no immediate announcement. No public statement. No trial. Just weeks of absolute radio silence while she was transported back to Rome. Rome understood that time itself was a weapon. During this period of silence, rumors spread throughout the former territories. People whispered about what might have happened to their queen. Was she dead? Being tortured? Imprisoned in some nightmare dungeon? This uncertainty was completely deliberate. It created a psychological terror that Rome could never achieve through an immediate public execution. The Edir, silence, also served another purpose. It gave Rome time to prepare the most devastating public humiliation possible. Then came the triumph. And this is where Rome's calculated cruelty reached its peak. A Roman triumph wasn't just a military parade. It was political theater on a massive scale, designed to reinforce Rome's power hierarchy in front of hundreds of thousands of spectators. When Emperor Aurelian finally brought Zenobia to Rome, here's what happened. She was dressed in her finest jewels, the same jewels she'd worn as queen. But now they were attached to golden chains so heavy that slaves had to walk beside her, literally helping to carry the weight. Think about the symbolism there. The jewels that once represented her power and status now represented her bondage. She couldn't even bear their weight alone. She was forced to walk on foot in front of Aurelian's chariot, which was pulled by 4 stags instead of horses, just to show off how exotic and ostentatious he could be. But here's what's crucial to understand. Rome didn't strip her naked. They didn't torture her publicly. They didn't mutilate her. That's what most people expect. That's what would seem worse at first glance. Instead, they did something far more psychologically devastating. They recontextualized everything that had made her powerful. The jewels that signified her royal status. Now they were literal chains. The territories she'd conquered, represented by chained prisoners walking in the same procession. Her former subjects, now Rome's property. The coins that bore her image as Augusta, now they depicted her defeat, mass-produced and distributed throughout the empire as propaganda. Rome was rewriting her entire story in real time in front of the entire city. Hundreds of thousands of Romans lined the streets, watching this woman who'd challenged their empire reduced to a spectacle. And here's the thing that makes this even more calculated. The crowd wasn't there to hate her. Accounts suggest that many Romans actually felt pity. Some sources claim she appeared so noble in her chains that the crowd sympathized with her. But that pity was part of the punishment. It demonstrated Rome's magnanimity, their ability to show mercy to even the most dangerous enemies. It made Rome look civilized, generous, powerful enough to be kind. Zenobia's humiliation became proof of Roman superiority. After the triumph, most people assume these queens were executed, a final brutal end to their stories. But that's not what Rome did. And this is where the punishment becomes truly sinister. Death would have made Zenobia a martyr. Her people could have rallied around her memory. Songs could have been written about her brave defiance and tragic end. Legends could have grown. Martyrdom is powerful. Martyrdom inspires resistance. So Rome did something far more calculated. They let her live. According to several historical sources, Zenobia was given a villa in Tibur, modern-day Tivoli, about 20 miles from Rome. She lived there, possibly for decades. Some accounts even suggest she married a Roman senator and lived out her life in comfortable retirement. From the outside, this looks like mercy. Roman propaganda certainly portrayed it that way. Emperor Aurelian demonstrating clementia, imperial clemency, to a defeated enemy. But this wasn't mercy. This was strategic erasure. Think about what this meant for Zenobia. She went from commanding the most powerful army in the East, controlling vast territories, declaring herself Augusta, to living in a villa, under Roman supervision, completely powerless. Every single day was a reminder of what she'd lost. Every morning she woke up. She was surrounded by Roman culture, Roman laws, Roman authority, the very system she'd tried to challenge. She became a living monument to Rome's dominance, a breathing, walking lesson to anyone who might consider rebellion. Look what happens when you defy. Rome, we don't even need to kill you. We'll just erase everything you were. And here's the most devastating part. As years passed, people forgot. Her empire crumbled. The territories she'd conquered were fully absorbed back into Rome. Her reforms were reversed. Her appointees were replaced. Her coinage was melted down and reminted with Roman imagery. Her story was rewritten from Rome's perspective by Roman historians, for Roman audiences. Rome didn't just defeat Zenobia. They systematically erased her legacy while she was still alive to witness it happening. She went from being an empress to being a curiosity, a footnote, a cautionary tale. Now, not every captured queen received this treatment, and understanding why tells us even more about Rome's strategy. Boudicca, the British queen, never made it to Rome. According to the historian Tacitus, she poisoned herself after her final defeat rather than face capture. She understood exactly what Rome would do to her. But here's what's chilling. Boudicca's suicide actually worked in Rome's favor. They couldn't parade her through the streets, but they could control her narrative. Roman historians portrayed her as a savage barbarian queen who led a foolish rebellion, was defeated by superior Roman tactics, and took the coward's way out when faced with the consequences. They shaped the story to make rebellion seem not just futile, but shameful. The message was clear. Challenge Rome, and even if you escape capture through death, we'll still destroy your legacy. We'll still control how history remembers you. So why did Rome go to all this effort? Why not just execute these queens and move on? Because Rome was playing a much longer game than most empires. An execution is a single moment. It creates a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. The queen challenged Rome. Rome defeated her. Rome killed her. Simple, clean, marketable for enemy propaganda, but a queen living in comfortable captivity, stripped of all power but kept alive. That's an ongoing demonstration of Rome's total dominance. Every year Zenobia lived in that villa was another year Rome could point to her and say, "This is what happens. You don't become a martyr. You don't inspire future generations. You just fade away." And it worked. For centuries after Zenobia, Rome faced remarkably few successful rebellions led by women. The message had been received across the empire's conquered territories. Challenging Rome didn't lead to glorious martyrdom or legendary status. It led to humiliation and erasure. You'd become a living example of Roman power, a cautionary tale, a name people would eventually forget. What made Rome's approach so devastatingly effective was that it attacked something more fundamental than physical existence. It attacked memory itself. Think about how humans process trauma and defeat. We create narratives. We tell stories about our fallen heroes that give their deaths meaning. Warrior who dies in battle becomes a legend. A leader who's executed becomes a martyr. Even in death, they can inspire future generations. Rome understood this psychological need for narrative closure, and they denied it. Zenobia didn't get a heroic death. She didn't get a tragic execution. She just continued existing in a villa, growing older, becoming less relevant with each passing year. There's no clean story there, no satisfying arc, no moment where her supporters could say she died fighting for what she believed in. Instead, there's just an uncomfortable, drawn-out fade into obscurity. And that ambiguity, that lack of narrative closure, made it impossible for her story to become the foundation of future resistance. You can't rally around someone who's living comfortably in retirement, can you? Rome turned potential martyrs into living contradictions, into examples of their own irrelevance. But the genius of Rome's strategy extended beyond the immediate psychological impact on these individual queens. Every person who witnessed Zenobia's triumph, every soldier who saw her walk in chains, every merchant who heard the story, every child who grew up knowing what happened to the queen who challenged Rome, they all internalized the same lesson. This wasn't just about Zenobia. It was about everyone who might come after her. Imagine you're a regional leader in one of Rome's conquered territories 50 years after Zenobia's defeat. You're considering rebellion. Your people are restless. You have the military capability to challenge local Roman authority. But you remember the stories about Zenobia, not the stories of her victories. Those have faded. But the stories about what happened after. The golden chains, the villa, the slow erasure of everything she'd built. And you think, is it worth it? That's the question Rome wanted every potential rebel to ask. Not, can I win? But even if I win initially, can I survive what comes after? The answer, demonstrated through living examples like Zenobia, was always no. Here's what makes this story even more chilling. Rome's strategy worked so well that we still don't know the complete truth about most of these queens. Zenobia's exact fate is still debated by historians. Did she die in Rome? Did she live to old age in that villa? Did she have children with a Roman senator? Did she ever try to escape, to return home, to reclaim any piece of her former power? We don't know. Because Rome controlled the narrative so completely that even 1,700 years later, their version of events is the only one that survived. And it's not just Zenobia. There were other queens, other female leaders who challenged Rome. Most of their names haven't survived at all. We know they existed only through brief mentions in Roman military records. A line or two about putting down a rebellion led by a local queen, before the text moves on to more important matters. Those women have been so thoroughly erased that we don't even know what we've lost. The historical records we have were written by Roman historians, from a Roman perspective, serving Roman political interests. The voices of the conquered, including these queens, were systematically suppressed or rewritten. Even now, in the 21st century, when we talk about Zenobia or Boudicca, we're seeing them through a lens Rome created. We're using sources Rome approved. We're repeating stories Rome wanted us to believe. That's the ultimate victory, isn't it? Not just defeating your enemies in battle, but controlling how history remembers them for millennia after they're dead. If you're finding this fascinating, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We're uncovering the real stories behind history's most brutal moments. The psychological warfare, the political calculations, the strategies that most history classes skip over entirely. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. So what did Roman soldiers actually do to captured queens? They didn't torture them to death in dungeons. They didn't burn them alive or throw them to wild animals in the Colosseum. They did something far more sophisticated and far more cruel. They orchestrated a systematic dismantling of everything these women had built. They transformed symbols of power into symbols of defeat. They turned triumph into humiliation through carefully staged public theater. And then, in the cases where they chose to, they kept them alive. Comfortable, safe even, living monuments to Roman supremacy, walking lessons in the futility of resistance, breathing proof that Rome didn't just defeat its enemies, it erased them from history while they were still alive to watch. But here's the question that should keep you up at night. How many other rulers, how many other rebellions, cultures, entire civilizations received the same treatment? How many stories has Rome successfully erased so completely that we Don't even know to ask about them? We know about Zenobia because she was powerful enough, successful enough, that Rome couldn't completely erase her, even though they tried. Her story survived in fragments, in contradictory accounts, in whispers that made it through Rome's propaganda machine. But what about the queens who weren't quite as successful? The ones who rebelled and lost before they became famous enough for Roman historians to bother recording? What about the stories that didn't survive at all? Rome's treatment of captured queens wasn't just about punishing individuals. It was about sending a message through time itself. Challenge us, and we'll erase you so thoroughly that future generations won't even know you existed. And somewhere, in the gaps of our historical record, in the silences between the names we do know, are the ghosts of queens whose names we'll never learn, whose stories Rome erased so successfully that they're just gone. Think about that the next time you read ancient history, and ask yourself, what else don't we know?